There are easier breads to make than sourdough. Most breads only require a few staple ingredients and a simple mix to be ready to rise, bake, and consume in under 2 hours. But sourdough is needy, and its starter temperamental. If not fed a consistent diet of sugar, the yeast die. The starter also requires time to stew in its ethanol juices before it can be beaten into submission and finally stretched into loaves and set to rise twice, baking just before patience runs out. On Sunday afternoons, after 2 days of anticipation, the loaves were ready for pickup from my grandmother's house. Sometimes she delivered them, as was the case one day following church, when Grammy, over a plate of, whatever she's having, and I, a platter of lettuce, asked me how much I weighed for the table to discuss. Although Grammy and I struggled to connect, my mom was able to give me the lineage of the sourdough that united us. The recipe came from my Grammy's mother, Faye, a wily woman who had the drive to start a dress shop during the Depression as a single mom, her young husband dead from a stroke. The original recipe was complex, full of wheat germ, cornmeal, bran, and oats. Grammy preferred her version with more sugar and less roughage. She made her living as a rancher's wife, capable, though not the sole recipient of his affections. 2 children grown and several business ventures poorer, she became nurse to her husband, now astride 2 metal wheels and grasping handrails instead of reins. At this time, she began making her mother's bread. A few years later, Grammy was let go from her previous roles and moved to my hometown. I was the default recipient of the weekly loaf as the youngest and geographically closest of my 4 cousins. And it took the waft of freshly baked bread to bring me to Grammy's house each week as I stood in the doorway, evading the deluge of personal questions and the stench of stale cat litter. With the buffer of several states and university studies, I went breadless for a while. Until Grammy got sick. My mom doesn't bake the bread. That's the recipe that works for her. But I decided to ask for the starter. And in time, I learned to love those little yeast bastards with their penchant for devouring all the sweet goodness in sight and choosing to bloom into something appetizing only when they saw fit. Knuckle deep in dough, working for the tacky but not sticky feeling, I followed Grammy's directives on my newly christened breadboard that she had had made for me. It looked just like hers. But like a sinner stuck in the church foyer, she never tarried long. She had to get home to her cats and her pre-recorded sports programming. A few weeks later, wouldn't you know it, that damn starter died. Truth is, the yeast didn't take kindly to having their sugar supply cut off for a month. I tried to tell Grammy, but as she lay, legs draped under a sheet, like defeated tent poles, she told me, "I think I've neglected it for a little while. You might have to start fresh."